The night sky over North America was clear, crisp, and almost unnaturally still. Families gathered on rooftops, college students crowded observatories, and live streams buzzed with anticipation. It was supposed to be a beautiful lunar eclipse, one of those rare celestial events that brought people together to look up at the same sky. I was standing on the balcony of the Houston Space Center, surrounded by colleagues. We had telescopes set up, laptops streaming real-time data, and cameras recording every angle. For most people, it was a spectacle. For us, it was a measurement. Eclipses were predictable, down to the second. The math never lied. The shadow began its slow crawl across the face of the moon. Cheers erupted from the crowd below as the bright silver surface dimmed into rusty red. The blood moon, they called it. But I wasn't cheering. Something was off. At first, I thought my telescope was misaligned. The shadow didn't fall exactly where it should have. The penumbra, that soft edge of Earth's shadow, seemed stretched, pulled just slightly to the left. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but to someone who had studied hundreds of eclipses, it was unmistakable. "Adjust your scope," my colleague Dr. Alvarez muttered beside me, frowning. "Mine's weird too." We exchanged glances. In science, weird was both the most exciting and terrifying word you could hear. Down below, children pointed at the sky, laughing. Photographers clicked away, capturing what they believed was a flawless event. No one noticed that the moon's timing was off by a few seconds, then by a few more. But in the control room behind us, screens began lighting up with alerts. Software that tracked orbital mechanics screamed with red anomalies. "This can't be right," muttered another scientist, typing furiously. "The Earth's shadow is drifting." I swallowed hard. Shadows don't drift. They are geometry, simple and elegant. If the shadow was in the wrong place, it meant something was wrong with Earth's position itself. I lifted my gaze back to the moon, watching its face vanish into that dark copper glow. I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just Earth casting a shadow anymore, that something else had joined the dance. Something invisible. The next morning, news anchors would call it the most beautiful eclipse of the century. But as I stood there, clutching my notepad with shaky hands, I knew better. This wasn't beauty. It was the first sign that something enormous was moving us, and the world hadn't noticed. By morning, the data was undeniable. I sat in the conference room at NASA headquarters, coffee untouched, as numbers scrolled across the screens. Orbital trackers from observatories worldwide had confirmed that Earth's trajectory had shifted by a fraction. Barely noticeable to the public, but catastrophic in the language of physics. "This must be an instrument error," one of the engineers insisted, his voice tight. "The timing variance could be atmospheric interference." "No." Dr. Alvarez shot back. She pushed her glasses higher and pointed to the graph. "We cross-checked with independent observatories in Chile, Japan, and South Africa. Same result. The penumbra was off by nearly 2 arcminutes. That doesn't just happen." The room went silent. An arcminute sounds small, like nothing at all. But in astronomy, it was the difference between precision and chaos. The cosmos doesn't tolerate mistakes. I leaned forward, staring at the models rotating on the screen. Earth's orbit was being tugged, not by the sun, not by the moon, not by any known planet. Something invisible had applied a subtle but measurable force. "So what are we saying?" the deputy director asked, his tone careful, like he was afraid to even speak it out loud. Dr. Alvarez's jaw tightened. "We're saying Earth has shifted position. Something is pulling us." The words hung in the air, heavy as lead. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Gravity was not something that just changed. For all of human history, our planet's path around the sun had been constant, a cosmic heartbeat we could rely on. Now, for the first time, that rhythm faltered. "Keep this internal," the director ordered finally. "No leaks to the press until we understand more. Last thing we need is panic." But panic had already begun to trickle through the cracks. Online forums buzzed with amateur astronomers posting side-by-side eclipse photos, pointing out tiny inconsistencies. "Why does the shadow look stretched?" one viral post asked. Conspiracy channels lit up with talk of alien megastructures, doomsday prophecies, secret government projects. I scrolled through my phone that night, watching the theories spiral out of control. Normally, I'd laugh at such nonsense, but this time I couldn't, because the truth was worse. We didn't know what was happening. The next day, I met with a colleague at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. He pulled me into his office, locked the door, and lowered his voice. "You didn't hear this from me," he said, sliding a tablet across his desk. But our deep space satellites are picking up anomalies too. The gravitational models don't add up. It's like, he hesitated. Like there's a mass we can't see. I frowned. Rogue planet? A brown dwarf. He shook his head. If it were either of those, we'd have spotted it years ago. This is different. Something we don't have a name for. The hair on my arms stood on end. An unseen object, massive enough to tug at Earth, lurking nearby, hiding in plain sight. Why hide this? I asked quietly. His eyes darted to the door. Because if the public finds out Earth itself is being dragged off course, there won't be order. There'll be chaos, and maybe they're right. That night, lying awake in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling. Every instinct told me this wasn't a glitch, wasn't a coincidence. Something had entered our solar system, something powerful, something that had already touched us. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of the sky. By the end of the week, the secret was out. No matter how much NASA tried to contain the data, it was impossible to silence thousands of amateur astronomers scattered across the globe. They weren't bound by security clearances or press protocols. They were passionate, obsessive, and loud. And they had proof. Side-by-side photos of the eclipse went viral. TikTok videos broke down the geometry with flashy graphics. On Reddit, threads titled, "Earth's shadow doesn't add up," skyrocketed to the top of our space. By Saturday, Fem-Moved shadow was trending worldwide. Most of the public dismissed it as another conspiracy craze. Flat earthers, alien hunters, end of world prophets. People lumped it into the same noisy bin. But there were others who weren't laughing. Astronomers with reputations on the line started speaking up. University professors confirmed the discrepancies. A well-known science YouTuber uploaded a video titled, "The Eclipse NASA Won't Talk About," and it hit 5 million views in 24 hours. Suddenly, silence looked suspicious. On Monday morning, the White House press secretary was forced to address it. Standing at the podium, with flashing cameras aimed at her, she smiled tightly and delivered the line we'd written for hers. There is no cause for alarm. Variations in atmospheric refraction during eclipses are normal, and independent measurements confirm Earth's orbit remains stable. It was a lie, a polished, careful lie, and no one believed it. Protests began in front of observatories. Crowds carried signs tell USTHTHOSPLINGRTHCHCHCHED. The footage made nightly news, and suddenly, the story wasn't a fringe theory anymore. It was mainstream. At the Space Center, the tension was unbearable. Every time I walked into the control room, I felt like I was keeping a terrible secret from the world outside. Dr. Alvarez had stopped pretending to stay calm. She slammed her coffee mug down on the table one morning and snapped, "We're not magicians. We can't keep lying forever." "We're not lying?" The director shot back. "We're buying time. Until we know what we're dealing with, the truth does more harm than good." I wasn't so sure. That night, I drove home past a church where a neon sign flashed in bright, radiating. THEAVCFFTD. Outside, a crowd of people sang hymns. Further down the road, another group burned effigies of satellites, convinced technology itself had caused this. Fear was spreading. And still, no one could answer the one question that kept me awake at night: what is pulling us? The breakthrough came from a backyard telescope in Arizona. A teenager named Ryan Jenkins uploaded a grainy video to YouTube of the stars near the constellation Orion. His footage showed something astonishing: a distortion. Stars behind the region seemed to bend, as if light itself were curving around something. Within hours, physicists confirmed it. The boy had captured evidence of gravitational lensing, space being warped by a massive invisible object. The unseen was real. CN ran with the headline, "Phantom Mass Detected Near Earth." Other networks were more dramatic. "Something is out there." And, "Are we being pulled into the unknown?" As I sat in my living room watching the anchors debate, a strange feeling came over me. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't looking up at the stars with wonder. They were looking up with suspicion. The moon no longer felt like a friendly neighbor. The sky no longer felt safe, and the whispers were getting louder. The discovery forced our hand. Within 48 hours of Ryan Jenkins's video going viral, the government convened an emergency session. Astronomers, military officials, and heads of state sat in a secure conference chamber beneath Washington, D.C. I was there along with Dr. Alvarez, our laptops open, our stomachs knotted. A projection lit up the screen, the distorted star field near Orion. The boy's footage had been verified and expanded with high-resolution data from the Hubble telescope. The evidence was irrefutable. Something massive was bending space-time near our solar system. Preliminary estimates put its mass at least half that of Jupiter, one of the astrophysicists announced. But it emits no heat, no light. Whatever it is, it's dark. A silence followed. The kind of silence that swallows entire rooms. Dark matter had always been theory, numbers and equations, the ghost of mass we couldn't see. But now, it wasn't theory. It was here. Dr. Alvarez broke the silence. If this object is moving through the system, its gravitational pull could destabilize Earth's orbit. That explains the eclipse anomaly. We're being dragged. The word made my skin crawl. A general leaned forward, his voice sharp. So what are we talking about here? A rogue planet? A black hole? Not a black hole, Alvarez replied. If it were, we'd see accretion energy radiation. This is something else. A mass that shouldn't exist. Another scientist added quietly. It's not just moving. It's steering. Heads turned. What do you mean steering? The general demanded. The scientist hesitated. Our models suggest its trajectory is adjusting slightly, almost like it's reacting to us. It's not a straight path. It's deliberate. The room erupted into arguments. Some dismissed it as overfitting the data. Others muttered about extraterrestrial technology. The politicians looked pale, already imagining headlines spiraling out of control. As the shouting grew louder, I felt the weight of a truth I couldn't ignore. We were no longer alone in writing Earth's future. Something unseen had reached into our orbit, tugged at our planet, and changed the rules of the game. That night I returned to the observatory. The moon hung high, glowing softly, a reminder of the night everything changed. But my eyes weren't on the moon anymore. They were fixed on the patch of sky where light bent wrong, where stars twisted unnaturally. I trained the telescope, my hands trembling, and there it was, emptiness shaped like presence, darkness shaped like form, a ripple in the fabric of space. It was impossible but undeniable, a force without light, a shadow without a body. Something was coming. And for the first time in history, Earth wasn't just moving through space. Space itself was moving us. The world didn't need official confirmation anymore. People could feel it. The tides were the first clue. Coastal cities reported waves rising higher than predicted, flooding boardwalks and washing away boats. Meteorologists scrambled to explain it, but the math didn't work. Gravity was rewriting the rules. Then came the animals. Whales stranded themselves in record numbers, birds veered off their migratory paths, and dogs barked endlessly at the sky as if they could sense something above us. Still, governments clung to silence. The official line was rare atmospheric and environmental anomalies. But everyone knew better. In Houston, the air felt heavy, not just the summer humidity, something else. A pressure you couldn't put words to. In the control room, we monitored our models around the clock, watching numbers skew further and further from normal. Every day it pulls harder, Dr. Alvarez muttered, her eyes locked on the screen. It's not random. It's building. What if it doesn't stop? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. The unease spread faster than any press release could contain. Grocery stores filled with panicked shoppers stocking up on canned food and bottled water. Churches overflowed with worshippers. Social media fractured into 1,000 theories, aliens, doomsday, secret weapons, even claims that Earth itself had grown tired of humanity and was drifting away on purpose. But the strangest thing was the quiet. In times of war, catastrophe, or natural disaster, the world usually buzzes with activity. Sirens, speeches, chaos. But this was different. This was a waiting game. Humanity knew something enormous was approaching, and all we could do was hold our breath. One evening, I stepped outside the lab for air. The night sky stretched above me, beautiful and cold. Neighbors were gathered on their porches, staring upward, not talking, not laughing, just looking. It reminded me of the silence before a storm, when the air thickens and every instinct whispers something is coming. Inside the lab, a breaking report flashed across the monitors. Satellite feeds showed massive atmospheric distortions, subtle bends in the clouds as if invisible hands were brushing across the Earth. It's here, Alvarez whispered. Within hours, the president appeared on live television. His face was pale, his voice strained but steady. My fellow Americans, he began, to all of humanity, we are not alone in the universe. An unidentified celestial mass has entered our solar system. It has already affected Earth's orbit. Scientists across the world are working tirelessly to understand it. For now, we urge calm. We will face this together. The words echoed across every screen, every phone, every radio. But calm was impossible. Markets crashed overnight. Flights filled with people desperate to escape coastal cities. In some towns, riots broke out. In others, communities formed prayer circles, clinging to faith. And in observatories across the globe, scientists like me stared at the data pouring in, trying to find meaning in the numbers, trying to understand what we were dealing with. The object was closer now, no longer a whisper in the stars, but a pressure at our doorstep. For millennia, humanity had looked at the night sky with wonder. Now we looked at it with dread. The first clear image came from the James Webb Space Telescope. We crowded into the control room, eyes fixed on the feed as the data assembled into a picture. At first, it looked like nothing, just a star field crisp and sharp. Then the distortion appeared. Light bent around an emptiness, a void that wasn't void. Enhance the contrast, Alvarez ordered, her voice low, steady only on the surface. The image sharpened, and there it was, an outline, faint but undeniable. A shape blocking the stars, bending them like ripples in water. It wasn't a sphere like a planet or a star. It was elongated, almost symmetrical. That's no natural body, someone whispered. The room fell silent. I stared at the image. My breath caught. It looked like an enormous structure, an arc, or perhaps the skeleton of a ship, dark as coal but the size of a moon. Its edges shimmered with gravitational lensing, like the universe itself was trying to wrap around it. It's artificial, Alvarez said finally. The word landed like a stone. For decades, humanity had asked if we were alone. That night, the question was answered, not by sound, not by signal, but by gravity itself. Something built by hands, or claws, or something we couldn't imagine, was here, and it was strong enough to move Earth. The data confirmed what our eyes refused to believe: the object was slowing down, adjusting. Its trajectory wasn't random at all. It's responding to us, Alvarez muttered. I shook my head. No, it's not responding, it's choosing. That evening, the world stopped pretending. Every network, every outlet, every feed carried the same headline: Colossal artificial object detected near Earth. The footage looped endlessly. Politicians scrambled to sound strong, religious leaders declared Judgment Day, and scientists begged for calm. But calm was impossible. In Times Square, the giant screens replayed the image over and over. Crowds stood shoulder to shoulder in stunned silence. Some cried, some prayed. Others just stared, as if their lives had been rewritten in an instant. I watched from my office, lights off, screen glowing in the dark. For years, I'd studied the skies, expecting beauty, order, elegance. And now the sky stared back, not with wonder, but with intent. The object had crossed the orbit of Mars. Within weeks, it would pass Earth, and the question that haunted every soul on the planet was no longer, what is it? It was, what does it want? It came without a sound. No roar, no thunder, no streak of fire through the sky. Just silence. A silence so complete it felt alive. The object passed the moon first. Satellites caught its shadow, long and unnatural, stretching across the lunar surface like a black stain. When the images hit the news feeds, the world stopped again. Crowds gathered in every city, eyes lifted to the sky. Children on rooftops, elders in rocking chairs, strangers clutching each other in the streets. We all looked up, waiting. And then, it appeared. I saw it first from the observatory roof. A sliver dark against the stars, bigger than comprehension. It didn't reflect light, it swallowed it. Like it wasn't made of matter at all, but of absence. Yet as it glided closer, I noticed faint pulses across its surface. Not lights in the way we knew them, but flickers, patterns maybe, like a heartbeat too slow for human rhythm. It's decelerating, Alvarez said beside me, her voice barely a whisper. The math confirmed that the object wasn't just flying past, it was stopping. On Earth, the panic hit a breaking point. Governments issued emergency broadcasts urging calm, but their voices cracked. Armies readied missiles that looked like toys compared to the behemoth in orbit. Stock markets collapsed. Some religions crowned it a god, others called it a demon. And through it all, the object hung there vast and indifferent. From the ground, people said it looked like a second moon, only darker, sharper, a hole punched into the night sky. Tides shifted wildly, storms built across the Atlantic, and the very crust of the earth groaned under its pull. For 3 days, it lingered unmoving, watching. We pointed every telescope, every radar dish, every antenna toward it. But nothing came back. No radio signal, no hum of energy we could understand. Only the silence and the shifting of our world beneath its weight. On the 4th day, something changed. At 20:17 a.m. UTC, a ripple spread across the surface of the object, a seam. Slowly, impossibly, it began to open, not with fire or noise, but with elegance, as though the darkness itself was peeling apart. Inside was light. Not the harsh light of engines or weapons, but a soft radiance, white and endless. It poured out across the earth, bathing the oceans and continents in its glow. Cities turned off their lamps because the sky itself burned brighter than day. And then we heard it. Not through radios, not through instruments, through ourselves. A sound, if you could call it that. A vibration deep in the chest, a resonance in the bones, like the earth itself was singing. Some fell to their knees. Some screamed. I just stood there unable to move, tears running down my face without knowing why. For the first time since it appeared, I realized something chilling. This wasn't just an object. It was aware, and it had finally decided to speak. The light wasn't just light. At first, it looked harmless, gentle, almost soothing. Oceans glittered as though covered in liquid diamonds. Deserts shimmered with white fire. Forests glowed emerald under its touch. People came out into the streets at night, standing shoulder to shoulder, bathed in brilliance. But then came the voices. Not heard, not spoken, felt. They came like fragments of dreams. Images of cities we'd never seen, faces we didn't know, languages not from Earth. Some people clutched their heads, screaming. Others collapsed, whispering names that didn't belong to them. And some smiled. We called them the listeners. It started in Paris. A crowd gathered near the sign, hundreds of people standing motionless, their eyes vacant, their lips moving in unison. The words weren't French. They weren't human at all. Live streams went viral instantly, drawing millions of viewers who watched in terror as the listeners began to chant in perfect rhythm. The same thing happened in New York, then Sao Paulo, then Delhi. Entire groups of strangers suddenly united in a language nobody else understood. Governments panicked. Police moved in, breaking up crowds, but nothing stopped the chanting. And the more people listened, the more they joined in. They're not chanting, Alvarez whispered as we watched the footage in the observatory. Her hands trembled. They're answering. Answering what? That was the question keeping the world awake. Scientists argued endlessly. Was the object transmitting thoughts directly into our minds? Was it rewriting neural pathways, hijacking language centers? Or was it reaching out? And yet, the phenomenon wasn't universal. Millions heard nothing. Millions more felt only nausea, headaches, or fear. But those who listened, those who spoke the alien tongue, they seemed changed. Stronger, calmer. Like they knew something the rest of us didn't. One evening, I went home exhausted, and as I lay down, I swore I felt it too. Not words, not voices, just a presence brushing against the edges of my thoughts. I snapped awake, sweating, terrified. What if it was inside me already? What if it was inside all of us? The debate shifted from what it was to why it had come. Some claimed it was benevolent, offering knowledge, unity, a higher consciousness. Others warned it was an invasion in slow motion, a way of hollowing us out before the final blow. And then something even stranger happened. The listeners began to move. Not randomly, not in chaos. Coordinated. In cities across the world, they rose one morning and walked to precise locations, abandoned fields, rooftops, deserts, mountain ridges. From above, satellites captured the patterns, circles, spirals, perfect geometries. Earth was becoming a map. Alvarez turned to me with hollow eyes. It's not speaking to us, she said. It's using us. And for the first time since it appeared, I felt something worse than awe. I felt hunted. The circles were complete. From the deserts of Nevada to the steppes of Mongolia, from rooftops in Tokyo to the Amazon rainforest, the listeners stood in perfect formations, unmoving, eyes blank but glowing faintly with the reflection of that impossible light. The world watched in paralyzed silence. Drones hovered over the patterns, recording the spirals, the symbols. Mathematicians screamed about primes, golden ratios, impossible equations written across the living earth itself. It wasn't random. It was a message, or maybe a key. Then, all at once, the listeners raised their hands to the sky. I'll never forget the sound. Not words, not music, but a resonance, a roar without air, shaking mountains and oceans. Glass shattered across entire cities. Birds dropped from the sky. The planet itself seemed to hum in response, like some ancient chord buried in the rock had been struck. And then, the Earth's shadow moved again. But this time, it wasn't subtle. The boundary between night and day tore itself loose. The Terminator line, that razor edge dividing darkness from light, shuddered and slid unnaturally, dragging night over continents in seconds. Sunlight bent, twisted as if the laws of the cosmos had been rewritten. People screamed. Planes fell from the sky, power grids fried. For a heartbeat, it looked like the end. And then stillness. The object in orbit pulsed once, twice like a dying heart. The listeners collapsed where they stood, motionless but alive. Their chanting ended. The glow faded from the earth. When it was over, the world was broken. But it was still here, and something had changed. The survivors of the chanting woke with knowledge they couldn't explain. Blueprints for machines, formulas for energy, visions of structures that defied physics. Some laughed with joy, calling it a gift. Others wept, calling it a curse. The governments tried to control it, but the knowledge spread like fire. Children wrote impossible equations in their school notebooks. Farmers dreamed of machines they had no words for. Artists painted things they swore they had seen, cities that floated, engines that fed on starlight. We had been touched, altered, but for what purpose? Standing on the observatory roof, I watched the sky. The object was gone, leaving only stars where it had hung like a wound. But I couldn't shake the feeling it was still out there waiting. It hadn't destroyed us. It hadn't saved us. It had changed us. And in the silence of that night, with the earth still trembling from what it had endured, I finally understood the truth. The shadow hadn't moved on its own. It had been pulled. We weren't the audience of this event. We were the experiment. And the ones who had begun it would be back,